Hello and welcome to the Revel Flow podcast. I'm your host, Flo, and I'm so excited to introduce our first guest on the show, Zane Campbell. I met Zane when he worked as the creative director at a gym I worked out at called CrossFit Future here in Ohio. And he's since left cold, currently snowing 20-degree Ohio, and has moved to sunny Miami, Florida. He's an entrepreneur, a creative, a designer, a YouTuber, a business owner for multiple companies, and a former race car driver. He wears many hats within the creative industry, and he has a lot of knowledge and experience in the industry to offer. So, welcome, Zane.
Hello, Flo. Thank you so much for bringing me on today. Appreciate it.
Of course. So, I wanted to have you on as a guest because I've seen you work in so many types of creative design. And I myself have asked you for help on my own design work. And I just remember one time I was asking you for advice on how to start my design business. And you gave me the greatest advice. I don't know if you remember it, but you said just start, just go for
Yes,
it.
that is the key. Yes,
It was like very freeing too, because I feel it took a lot of pressure off of trying to be perfect and just start, you know? So yeah,
absolutely. The
that
biggest
was
creative battle, perfection over just doing it and starting.
100%. And you have a reputation of people or helping people lean into their creative passions. And I would love to hear how you started out on that self-discovery journey for yourself.
Yeah, totally. So for me, it really came from hitting a low point. And, I guess it was a low point for me because like my wife who struggles with depression and a lot of the mental health cases that a lot of people struggle with nowadays. I don't want to say I was to that point, but to me it was a low point. And it was basically just self-discovery for the fact that at the time I was 19, 20. I'm 28 now. I was probably 19, 20 in that area. And I was working as part ownership and also general manager of Domino's Pizza in Ohio. So I had 1.4 different stores. And I just got out of college, and I only really went to college. I went to college to pursue a career in criminal justice. And after finishing up college, I realized I really only went to school just to do sports. That was really
Mhm.
that was really all I did it for. And I did have an interest, and I still do, in criminal justice, but I just knew that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. So I got offered this great position, as I said, at Domino's. So I was doing that for about 3 years. But it was just one day where there's so much people don't understand, like in the food business, how much it involves so many different aspects. And when you are in charge of many different aspects of 3 different stores, there's a lot of stress and a lot of headaches and a lot of problems that come about. And I remember I was severely just beat down. I wasn't even working out. I just was miserable, truthfully. And I got really sick one day. And long story short is I had to call one of my district managers to have help to get into the store. I was basically like, I gotta go to the hospital, have a huge temperature. I feel like death. And I'm not one to
Wow.
go to the hospital, but like this was just not normal. And that came after like sleeping like in my walk-in cooler in one of my stores for like 3 straight nights because that was what it took. He wasn't happy, and he's like, it's your store, you've got to be at your store no matter what. Long story, I'm like, I'm not going to get people sick. Like clearly there's
Yeah.
something wrong here. I don't feel good. I'm not going to make pizzas and get all my customers sick. So at that point, I didn't even go to the hospital. And that's kind of what happened. It was like the aha moment right there, to where it was 2 a.m. I went into my office, locked myself in there, and I took out a piece of paper. Now I'm all digital. Back then I wasn't. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote the 5 things that I just want. I was like, if I could do anything for the rest of my life, what are the 5 things I want to do? And I wrote them down. And they've changed a little bit. I think throughout the years, I truthfully don't. It was such like an aha moment that like happened so quickly that I don't really truly remember the exact 5. But it was along the lines of like making sure that I'm one with God and making sure my faith is in a proper spot, because that's
Mhm.
ultimately, why we're all here. I wanted to start a race car business and race cars for a living. I didn't know how, but I knew I loved media and I wanted to get into media and content creation. And mind you, like I said, so I was 20. I knew nothing about anything that I do today at
Hmm.
20. This was all just in the last 9 years.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to do was play video games because I love video games, and especially in the creative space, it allows me to kind of unlock whether you're stressed out, exhausted as we all get, whether you're creatively burnt out. I feel like video games always allowed me to kind of get back into that. And lastly, was literally just be happy because I've struggled so much with happiness and negativities, and I had a lot of tough childhood growing up, so there's always those negative aspects of it. But as time progressed, I really, at least in my mind, I can't speak for others, and I know it's a very touchy subject, but in my mind, happiness is a choice. I don't
Mhm.
speak for others on that, but that's for me. And that literally is what led me into doing everything that I've kind of built around my basis for today, especially creatively.
Yeah.
But basically, from there, I ended up leaving Domino's just a few months after that. Took every penny that I had and invested in my race car business. Raced professionally for roughly 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Um, it's so expensive, and that's something
Mhm.
that I want to do again, and it's something I want to get back into. But the cost is just crazy, especially being self-funded. I had sponsorships and I had
Mhm.
partners, but majority of it was on me. So the reason I got into media was because about halfway through my race car career, I knew if I was going to continue this or even have a life outside of it, I had to find another way to make money.
Yeah.
So on 18, 20-hour drives where it was myself, truck and trailer, and my car in the back, I was listening to how to be creative, how to do this, how to do that, how to do that. I'd pull up YouTube videos. I do it. It's whatever. I would watch YouTube videos as I'm driving right here. I would watch how to do graphic design, how to make videos, how to do X, how to do X, how to do X. And just that's all I did.
Yeah.
So between all my hours and hours of drives, and then whenever I'd be at a hotel, if I wasn't doing something for racing, I would be watching those videos. And that's kind of what led me to understanding. And then from there, everything was self-taught. I told myself that if I could film on the basic smartphone, that I could then use anything. Because if you start, and I don't want to say smartphones at the bottom, because let's be real, smartphones, iPhones, whatever you have is just mind blowing. But I started with an iPhone. It was an iPhone 11, and I learned everything through that, just by creating content to an iPhone. If I can make an iPhone look good, I can make any camera look good. And that's what my focus was. I took my first gig out in Los Angeles. Before that, I was just doing YouTube videos. I was a full-time YouTuber for 2 years. I didn't make any money. It was more, I say full-time because it was a full-time job, but it was just more learning. That's actually kind of how I got everything, all my learning aspect out, like my failures, my mistakes, things I didn't like all happened on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel and go to the very, very first, that was where it all started. And I did that for like 2 years while I was racing. And that was kind of the beginning. And then my first non-personal thing was went out to LA, shot at Holmby Hills Neon Mansion, which I'm sure a lot of people who at least know me, I've talked about before, because it was like my biggest achievement, one of my biggest achievements. It was the first thing I ever did, but Wall Street Journal was there, Washington Post was there. It was this
Wow.
ginormous Los Angeles party in this big mansion hosted by one of my good friends and still realtor to this day, Enzo Fiore. And I did the entire thing on an iPhone, and it just turned out phenomenal. And then from
Wow.
there, that's still today. If you type in Neon Mansion on Google, my video still pops up first or second on Google to this day, which is just awesome. And then right below it or right above it, like
Mhm.
Washington Post, Wall Street Journal. So it's like the coolest thing. Like that was the first thing I ever really did. And it was like such a big hit, and I got addicted. It happened. And then from there, it's just been a constant learning curve every day, trying to be the best creative, the best designer, the best videographer, the best photographer that I can do. And that led us to exactly where we are right now in picturesque Miami and doing everything that I do today.
Wow. That's a really cool origin story. And I think it's really important what you did in the beginning where you prioritized, because I think so many people end up on the hamster wheel and just go through the motions and just try to get that next paycheck, try to survive. And you kind of had no other choice. So I think it's really important to prioritize and have those lists of things that are you like at your core rather than what you've always been told. Like even going through your schooling, realizing this is great, but this is not what's keeping me in school. Sports are keeping me in school. And I feel going through my whole college experience too, I had to pick a major. I had to pick classes that would get me in the seat. Otherwise, there was no way I was
So
going into it. And you still went through a creative school. YouTube University. Like you
Yes.
still went through and you put in the same amount of hours you probably would have even more and more directly focused.
Yeah, and I also think a big part of that is you have to find what works best for you. Because like for
Totally.
me, I'm a complete tech online nerd. Like I love learning myself at my own pace. And I like to consider myself a fast learner, but I think the majority for my learning just comes from watching YouTube videos. I know I
Mhm.
give that a lot of advice to people who ask about myself and it just doesn't work for them. And that's
Mhm.
fine. And so like it's like a morning routine or an evening routine. You hear about the perfect morning routine. The perfect morning routine is what's best for you. the
Yeah,
person the perfect creative thing is what's best for you. So what might work for one doesn't work for another. And I think the self-awareness to realize what really matters on that, like what is utmost priority for you compared to somebody else, is another huge aspect of that.
totally. And back to like your first big job, getting to LA. You said you had a contact, right? He was one of your friends.
Yep.
So when you stepped on to that property, your first pet, I don't know if it was your first paying gig, but your first like breakout gig,
Yeah.
what were you going through? Like, were you feeling were you just psyched or was it the other side of the swing?
And I still remember it too, like it was yesterday, but really I felt no pressure. And
Wow.
the reason being was because Enzo, who's like one of my good buddies, when I went out there, I spent a lot of time in LA. So LA was at that time like a second home to me. I spent so much time out there. So I was kind of just I was there a few days before and I was just living life like I normally would. And then when I met up with my buddy Enzo, before we even went to the house, it was just like a friend meetup. So it was really relaxed and calm. You know, I was just catching up, talking to him. And then once we got there, it never really even set in like what I was doing or the aspect of it until it was already over. I was basically just there hanging out with a friend and having a good time and just kind of filming. And it's weird because like I look at my filmmaking journey and what I've started at and where I'm at now, and every day I'm trying to get better. And especially right now, like I've got a really, really good partner, and you actually know him as well, Jordan, who used to work at Future as well.
Yeah.
Um, I brought him on the team here and he's living with me. He's actually living with me at this moment, my wife and I. I've learned a lot from him. And we have two different aspects because I started really in the kind of coming up in the social media world. He came up in the movie world. So we learn a lot from each other. But you know, we always have that constant ebbs and flows of learning things. And I look back at that first video of mine, I don't even know where a lot of that even came from. And what I mean is that was so much better than I even was at that point. Like I look at the YouTube videos that align with that video. My YouTube videos, I mean, I'm just gonna be real, were horrible. I mean, they weren't bad. They were just creatively, they were
You were
bad.
learning. Yeah, you were
Yeah,
learning.
exactly. But then
Yeah.
I watched that Neon Mansion video and I'm like, where did this come from? Like I didn't even have the talent to somehow do this. And I
Yeah.
did it. So it was like an out of body. Like I watched that back and I'm like, I didn't film this. I didn't edit this. And today it's not like the greatest, most amazing thing ever. But for what I was at that time, I don't even know how it turned out that good, but it turned out just so good. So it was more just kind of surreal. And I didn't even really realize it until after it was over. And I think this is funny how like things work and time frames work, whether you realize it or not. At that point, had just met my wife, who obviously at the time was my girlfriend. And she kind of took a lot of pressure off because I was like, ooh, like I got this new girlfriend. And I like literally started dating her and immediately left to LA. So like we were talking this whole trip and I was like so just enjoying my life. Like I'm out in LA, I've got this new girlfriend and it just kind of relieved all that pressure. And now here we are, you know, 4.5, whatever, how many years later, and I'm married to her. So it's just kind of weird how all that works.
Yeah. It's one of those things, it feels more low stakes at that point because your happiness wasn't riding on the success or failure. It was what an opportunity.
And that's a great, great point. That is a great point. You're exactly right. There was no failure, success. It was just make something look good, and that was it. And
Yeah.
now everything's got deadlines and what looks good, what clients like, what clients don't like.
The reality is kicking in. I
Yeah.
think it really does speak to when you feel like you can relax and enjoy the process. That's when creatives really flourish. And I think you had the secret sauce there when you were making that. And that's, I'm guessing, why it turned out as good as it did, is
Agreed.
because you just got to free flow through it. So going from there, where you're at now, and from that very first Neon House, is that what it was called?
Neon
Video.
Mansion.
Neon Mansion, even better. Um, what was the process? Because you started what, 3 companies now up until right now? Walk us
Yeah.
through kind of that history.
So from there, I started Z Company Media. Right before Neon Mansion, I mentioned I spent a lot of time in LA. I was doing all my racing. I was a ton of racing out in LA during the winter months, of course, over in Ohio.
Mhm.
So when it was winter, I was out Willow Springs, places over there, Irwindale, doing racing events out in LA. That's kind of when, after Neon Mansion, I was like, okay, I got to start this media stuff. So I started Z Company Media, which was just me providing media services to clients. And it didn't matter at that time, I didn't even have a niche. I was basically going door to door, and this was back in Ohio. Once I got back, I built myself a media kit, and I put a lot of stuff of Neon Mansion in there. And I was still learning kind of how to pitch myself and sell myself. But I made this media kit, and I'm basically just going from door to different businesses there in Lancaster and Columbus and Canal and all these different areas in Ohio, and just giving them my media kit and telling them, hey, if you need anything, let me know. From there, I got some gigs. I got a couple restaurants in Lancaster. My first ever really true gig was JB's restaurant
Nice.
down in Lancaster, downtown Lancaster. And from there, I just started building the list of clients, different people. A lot of them at that time were short, like 1-2 month deals, 3 month deals, short-term stuff. And then I started to get into more of the longer term stuff. That then turned into meeting Mark a few years later, of course, at Future at the gym.
Mhm.
And Mark led to obviously a change of the guard a little bit, because I went from being completely freelance entrepreneur to where Mark wanted me to partner basically with Future and, run the creative team there. So then I went as creative director, as you mentioned, and I basically let anything that didn't have to do with Future, I stopped at that point, just because I didn't A, have the time, and B, I was committed to Future, so I wasn't
Yeah.
going to do anything else. And then also with that led to Chris, of course, which was my first realtor that I started working with. I did a few side gigs way back before that, but like full-time creative position. But I got so involved with Future that I started to lose myself again, truthfully, because I was so involved in just Future and nothing else, that I was starting to fall back into that trap. So I had a big long talk with Mark and decided that I still wanted to do Future stuff, but I no longer basically wanted to be the creative director. I wanted to step down and allow myself more freedom to do other gigs. So that then turned from Z Company Media. I changed the business then to just my name, Zane Campbell LLC. And then I was doing Future stuff with Chris at what the time was CRT Realtors, and then transitioned into TSG Realtors. And those are my 2 big full-time projects that I was doing in Ohio for quite a long period of time. So then that's basically where allowed me to have time for myself and my creative personal passions, still able to commit to Chris and still able to commit to Future, still able to work out, do everything like that. And that was what really led me to that was my life up until moving now here to Miami. So Z Company Racing, Z Company Media, and then Z Company Media transitioned into Zane Campbell LLC. And now technically all that's kind of dead, because
Mm.
this is now what we're doing now is our main. So
Yeah. And so why Miami? What brought you from, because you had 2 really good gigs going
Mhm.
on, and then you had just gotten married right at the tail end before moving to Miami?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. So
Yeah.
life hits you hard. So the story with Miami is that my wife and I had our honeymoon on October 22nd, 2022.
We have the same wedding date, right?
Yes.
October 21st. That's right.
21st, and we went on our honeymoon the next day after. That is correct. Yeah, we talked
Wow.
about that. Yes, it's
Yeah. It's a
crazy.
great day
Yes.
to get married.
Yes, totally. So we went on our honeymoon on the 22nd of October of 2022. And as I said, we are full-time in Chris and in Future with Mark and doing my own thing. That's exactly where I was. And leading up to the wedding, of course, mind you, that week before, that month before the wedding was the most stressful. Just, time, there's arguments, and you don't want arguments, but you have them because you're trying to figure stuff out, and tensions are running high, and it's so stressful. But before the wedding, Sam, my wife, and I, which Sam, of course, but for the
Mhm.
viewers who don't, we're talking, and it's like, okay, and mind you, I was doing well enough on our own. My wife hasn't worked. She didn't work in Ohio because in Ohio it's not really expensive to live. It's cheap. We're living in a 3-bedroom apartment and we're only paying like $1,300 for rent or something. And I was pulling between roughly 6,000 to 10,000 a month, depending on certain gigs. And life was great. So that was kind of our talk. And it was like, before we get married, it's okay. So we get back from honeymoon. I'm diving back into full time here, going to continue doing what I'm doing. We're going to save up enough, continue to save money for a house and basically start our life. And, we were content at that point too, with an apartment. We really liked our place and we had really no intent to move, but I knew we had you always want to have those accomplishments and move the needle forward. Mm-hmm. So life just got flipped upside down. Of course, God had his plan and I sure as heck didn't. This is why I just trust God's plan. Yeah. And my wife and I we kind of agreed that this was just God's plan. So I say all that. So we finish up in Miami. We came to Miami for a honeymoon. We went on a cruise, 7-day cruise, came back and we had 2 days in Miami. My sister and I didn't really talk a lot. But she was at my wedding. And from there, we decided to meet together in Miami after we got off our cruise. So there, my sister, and now her husband is Toby, and I'm very familiar with the whole family, just never talked to them too much. That's, like I said, a whole different story.
Basically, that's for the next episode.
Exactly. Toby is, just an ultra wealthy businessman. That's how I always knew him, was just an ultra wealthy businessman. And I really hadn't ever really talked to Toby. Now, as a kid, I did. I was younger. I mean, probably 10, 15, 13, just a couple times when I was younger. But I've never talked to him as an adult. He's got a condition to where he's in a wheelchair full time and he has no movement from the waist down. So he's in an iBot. So it's basically like a robot that kind of moves him wherever he needs to go. But Toby and I started talking business. And he wanted to hear about what I did in my career and what I was working on. And how he was telling me about his businesses. And at the time, he just went through a really hard part in his life because he just got out of a coma because of his health. He was in a coma for 6 months. Everyone thought he was dying. And he signed over his business at that point that he was making all this money in. So he ended up getting a very large chunk of money. And basically it was, I've got all this money. I've got a second chance at life. Let's start a business. One stipulation, you move to Miami. Because starting business is something that's you need to do as a team. And I went to that meeting and I remember going back and talking to Sam and I was just like, well, I think we need to talk about potentially moving to Miami. So Sam, she's a country girl at heart. She's from Amanda. She lives on basically a farm. You got a shooting range in their backyard. And she is not a city girl. I took her to LA for the first time like 4.5 years ago, right after I got done with the mansion. And she was lost. This was not her cup of tea. 8 lanes of traffic, all these people. So she's not really a city girl. So
LA's culture shock for anybody, I feel like.
Yes, exactly. So she's not that type of person. So we ended up going out and just kind of deciding that, okay, we're going to kind of avoid the big cities. Well, now here we are talking about moving to Miami. And her first ever time in Miami was just going on that cruise. So that was the first time she's ever been to Miami. And she didn't really, of course, explore because we got there, went in the cruise, came back, and here we are. We just decided, you know what, this is God's plan. It's something bigger that we don't understand. We have a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear because in Ohio, we were really comfortable. And I think that's something that sounds nice, but at least when you're constantly driven to be more, comfortability kills.
Yeah, definitely.
And I knew personally we had to do it. As long as she was okay with it, I was going to do it because I didn't understand the plan. I didn't know where we were going. And even today, this very moment, I'm still questioning. And not if this was the right move, what are we doing here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? What am I doing here? With all these different aspects of the business, I don't even know yet. You kind of just figure this out as you go. Because we have a real estate business now and we have a media business. We have a record label and a media business. So technically we have 3-Away Productions, which is our media business. We have 3-Away Projects, which is our record label, which still involves a ton of media, obviously for our artists and getting their voices heard. And then we have the real estate business, which is 5-Away Holdings. So I knew nothing about a record label and I knew nothing about Real estate. I mean, I had some general ideas. So all this has been learning. Now, the production aspect, of course, has been, a little bit easier in learning because I kind of knew the majority. We're always learning, but I knew what I
Mhm.
had to do basically. So a lot of trying to figure out what in the actual heck we're doing. But at that point, yeah, we ended up moving to Miami, and we moved just 2 months after that. And actually, yesterday was our 1 year in Miami. So we've been here 1 year and 1 day. And we very quickly found a place. And we also very quickly found how expensive Miami is. And finances, even to this very moment, finances are upside down
Mm.
compared to what they were. Not a good thing, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and it takes time to build that. And we're working with multi-million dollar businesses. We are multi-million dollar business ourselves with our real estate properties. So it's not about if it'll happen, it's just when. So every
Mhm.
day is just a battle to keep growing and becoming the business that we want to be. We have four of us here full time, working every day from this office, and it's the grind that all people talk about, and it's
Yeah.
not easy. It's not fun at times. Sometimes it is fun. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you hate your life. Sometimes you love your life. But that's kind of how we ended up here in Miami, and kind of how we started transitioning into what we're doing now.
It's funny you ended up going back to the place you had your honeymoon because so many people would love to live where they honeymooned, and it's like God's like, "Here you go. Have this
Yeah,
nice little piece of paradise." And
absolutely.
that's just incredible, and that Sam, man, what a woman to be on board. Already a big change in life of getting married and then just going along for the ride with you.
And
Yeah.
even today, like that's been so difficult. And that's where like I feel guilty as a man, because she struggled so much with this
Mm,
at times, especially. I don't want to speak about all her stuff and what she's gone through, but like early on when we first moved here, and like I said, she struggles with mental health already. So
mhm,
she had some serious complications, with herself, her mental side. It led us, and as a husband and wife, really hard times. We had a few months there where you're questioning, is this really what you want, or is this what God wants? Because it turns brutal at times. She's not in the right headspace, and you're trying to make our lives $1 million, millions and millions of dollars, and you're
mhm.
putting in these long, long hours, but then your wife's at home struggling with her health, her mental health, and then she's mad because you're not home, and you're like, well, we moved here for this, and it's just a war.
Yeah.
But put our trust in God, put your faith in Him, and it ended up obviously just fine, because where we are now is great. But there was a
Yeah.
few months there where it was definitely a struggle, and even to today, there's times where life's great one day, and then the next day she might be really upset, like she just misses
Yeah.
her friends and misses her family, and she has a hard time meeting friends too, so she doesn't have a lot of friends down here. But we, kudos to her for that, and I've tried to be the best husband and supporter I can of her in that difficult time, because I totally understand that. Doesn't make it easy. Doesn't mean I don't get
Mhm.
frustrated, because I'm human, but that's kind of, that's a big part of that, was trying to fight through those battles, and still to this day fighting through those battles.
Definitely. And I think it's important to have these kind of conversations too, because a lot of people, as you know, living in the social media world, they see, oh my gosh, palm trees behind your head. You've got that ocean right there. You're in Miami. You have a multi-million dollar business. You've
Mm,
started and you're married now and you're doing all these great things, but there's always more to the story. And I know you have a tattoo on your hand. It says trust the process, right? Yep,
yep,
there it is.
correct.
Yeah, and that's such yeah, there it is for the camera. It's such an important truth because if you're not willing to trust that, especially if you know that God is in the plan and that you are moving in the proper direction, it's it feels like purposeless pain if you're just going through it and where is this means to an end? But like you're where you're supposed to be. And that's where your hope is like, okay, God brought us here for something. And if God calls you to something, it's because there's joy and there's your calling there for it. And so trusting that process, you're being formed, you're being molded into the best version of you. It is
Mm,
quite an adventure to go along with.
yeah, and all that's true, very, very true. And I think, I think about where, every year you want to make a step forward.
Definitely.
And I think one of the hardest things that I've really struggled with over the last year is, truthfully, I feel like I haven't taken a step forward. I feel like I've taken a step back because happiness to me is like the most important thing. But I'm also learning in certain aspects, like my mindset has also changed. I went from trying to make, 10K a month in Ohio to now trying to make millions of dollars. And I've signed up for it and I've sacrificed so far and I'm going to continue to do so. But I'm struggling now with where's the balance between happiness and just having to do stuff that you don't want to do, but you need to do it. And that's definitely an issue. And it's also difficult because like Toby, my main partner, he's so, and this is his blessing and his gift from
Mhm.
God. He's so set on his successes and his millions of dollars that nothing else matters.
Mm.
So it's been a learning process also for him because I've tried to bring him down more to this level where it's not everything's money, 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 money. There's also a lot of emotions involved and family involved and kids involved and his kids involved. That's what I mean by that. And
Yeah.
everything like that. So that's kind of been a process for him to understand where I'm at and also where he's at.
Yeah.
Because if I was just doing my daily, there's a lot of times when I probably wouldn't do something to help the business grow if it was my own, because I'm like, well, I'm comfortable at 10K a month. But why
Mm.
do I need 100K a month?
Right.
Like learning about that is another huge aspect and trying to balance that. And him and I had this kind of really deep heart to heart talk just a while ago. I'd say maybe 3 or 4 months ago, where I was basically at my wit's end
Mm.
because it was just constant work all the time. And I was so frustrated because I was like, well, where's me in this? Because I don't see a
Yeah.
me. And I kind of told him my thoughts. He kind of told me his thoughts. And ever since, it's kind of helped see the direction.
Mhm.
Because like I said, when you're living in Ohio and you're doing, 6 to 10K a month, it's easy. I've got $7,000 a month in bills down here, just in bills.
Yeah. Dang.
So if I'm not making at least 7K a month, I can't survive. And
Mm.
that's a big aspect because I've never been money driven ever. And that's another like question of like, money is the root of all evil, right? That's what you always hear. So it's like, I don't want that to be me. And
Yeah.
I'm not doing this because I want to be a millionaire. I'm doing this because I want to, first off, challenge myself. And second off, I want to give the life that I see Toby live to my
Mhm.
kids and to
Yeah.
my wife. And not even about a luxurious over the top life. It's about no matter what happens in your life, you don't have to worry about money.
Yeah.
And that is something that speaks to me more than just about anything because I didn't have any money growing up. I had a single mom. And I also want to repay her for all of her work that she's done for me since I've been a baby. And doing those things and trying to just grow outside of what I didn't think I could be, basically. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of like going against my previous self, but also trying to mold the two together and find that balance and what's too much versus what's not enough. And it's just a constant everyday headwind that goes on with stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's good you mentioned you had that heart to heart with Toby just to set up the expectations. Because when you look back on your launching point of those 5 priorities, keeping
Hmm.
those in the forefront of your mind and allowing those to kind of set margins or boundaries in your life of this is what I am willing to say yes to, this is what I'm willing to say no to. And I know bringing God into it as well, He will give you those directions of this is a no, this is a yes, this is how you protect time for your family, for your mental well-being as well. And He sees your heart for wanting to provide for your family. And I don't think, just based on talking, I don't think you have to worry about money becoming your root for everything. One, that's
Yeah.
not your like natural bend. And two, He sees that you just want to provide, right? You just want to do what you can do to to leave a great legacy for your family and for Sam and for your mom. And so all that to say, yeah, it's very important to know yourself and know your capacity, your boundaries, what is important to you in life, and then allowing others to kind of like yourself leading with that expectation So there's no gaps in understanding. And because, those gaps are what create like frustration and why isn't he not
Mhm.
wanting to work? Why does he not want to make $1 million a month And so
Exactly.
I think that's an important point is make sure that, even as a creative, it's so important to protect those moments to where you can stop and refill and work on a fun project, work on your YouTube channel. Because other than if you don't give yourself time for that, you're going to lose your creative juices for the paid work, right?
And it's funny you say that because you want to know my biggest struggle of everything of being a creative is when I was on my own, I was constantly just going different places. Always. I would do X film job and then I'd travel to LA and edit in LA. And then I'd do X project and I'd travel to Vegas because I wanted to go to Vegas and edit from Vegas.
Yeah.
And then I would go to X and then A and then C and then P. And I was always on the move because it allowed my brain to constantly stay on the move because objects that
Mhm.
stay in motion continue in motion, objects that stay stagnant.
Oh, yeah.
At Future, I really hit my first time where I was really struggling in that because I was at the same place every single day and my creativeness was slowly falling and I was trying to pull it back out and pull it back out. And now here, this is another sacrifice where I'm trying to learn at the same time because we're here every day, every single day. And it's very easy to lose that creative drive again because I'm at the same spot every day. And we do things, of course, and we meet people and go to breakfast and lunch and dinner and go to all these nice places that I don't even have to pay for, which is amazing. But on the creative aspect, it's like it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm trying to
Mhm.
find ways to reinflate and reinflate and reinflate because that's such an important part of being a creative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're kind of in the middle of this new, adventure that you're going through. Are you finding any success in kind of refilling yourself? Is there anything that you are maybe looking to in the future of, okay, right now I'm in the mud, but I can see little glimmers of like, okay, coming up, I'm looking forward to this trip or I'm looking forward. Is there anything you're using or doing to bring inspiration to yourself?
So I think it's a very kind of just going back to what I said, it's very important to have that.
Mhm.
Last year, I didn't really have that too much. I'm still trying to figure everything out. So fresh. Also trying to just survive.
Mhm.
Um, we went on a cruise about 4 months ago. That was like just ginormous for me. And I actually bring that up because where that intervention I had with Toby happened right after that cruise, because I
Oh,
got
good.
back to the cruise and I came back here and I was like, I don't even feel like I left. I feel like
Mm-mm.
I'm still here. I feel like I never left. So that's kind of what led to that conversation. And nowadays, between spending time with Sam when I get home, I still work most of the time, but it's nice to just sit on the couch and
Mhm.
watch movie with her and do some work and try to as be with her as much as possible. We had an amazing day yesterday, just getting up and going to the park. We had a breakfast at our first time ever at this new place that just opened up down the street. And I went for my first, it's so manly. I went on my first pedicure yesterday
Yeah,
with
you
her.
did. Good for
Yeah.
you. Those are great.
So, so just doing things like that. I also like to, before the episode started, I mentioned video games. I use
Mhm.
that when I'm really getting to a point where I just need to express some creativeness. I can put that into games. And I also have an aspiration to get my pilot's license one day because I love planes.
Yeah.
So I also spend some free time, well, whatever free time there is, flying planes on a flight simulator and learning all about that aspect. So that kind of brings back some creativeness. But truthfully, I think it's really actually the end game. And by what I mean is we have a goal here of 5 years, and in
Mm.
5 years we're done. We're already a year in. And in 5 years, we should have everything that we need plus more.
Mhm.
That's like where we're at as this business. So for me, it's about not and that's the balance of not throwing away the next 5 years of just work,
Mhm.
but committing most of everything I've got to that because I know in 5 years when I will be 34 years old, I'm like, what? Like I'm 34 and I've got couple million, 10 million in the bank and what's next? Like that's kind of the drive
Mm.
where I'm trying to just get to, because I
Mhm.
know, like, there's zero doubt what the people that we have working in this business and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, there's zero doubt we'll get there. We
Yeah,
just gotta get, so it's just keep putting your head down and just keep pushing towards that and doing everything I possibly can to get to that point.
definitely. And finding ways to keep within that. I feel like you're just in a new school. Like you had YouTube University with
Yeah.
during your race car,
Yeah.
professional race car driving, and then now you are, let's call it an internship, a very well paid internship where you're really learning what's important for you and your family, and you're really learning what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. And like you said, your 5-year plan, that is a very good possibility. It's
Mhm.
looking very, very possible. It gives
Mhm.
you the power back to you. You get to
Yeah,
call the
absolutely.
shots of, okay, we've got this great foundation. We can do any XYZ creative project that we want. And so I think that's very true to like process of life. Like you have to have a building period to get to where you can eventually enjoy the works of your labor, right? So it's good to have a vision. All of that to say, I saw on your Instagram that you're working with an artist, a musician or singer.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. He's a pop, rap, hip hop artist at the moment. Correct. Yep.
What do you do for that? What is your
Yeah,
role
so
there?
that's the record label. So that's Three-Way
Oh yeah.
Projects. So our artist is Vince Montage, and it's exactly as it sounds. We are a record label, and then myself, and then Jordan, of course. We do all the media and all the marketing behind that artist. We've had great success so far in this time. We've only had the label about 7 months. He has already opened for Little Pump, if people are familiar with Little Pump. He's opened for Trippie Redd.
Hmm.
He's had at least 10 shows of 500 people or more.
Wow.
And he's already done a song with, trying to think of, London on the Track. If anybody's familiar with London on the Track, these are guys with millions and millions of followers on social media. Some people don't know them because they're not in the hip hop rap game. And then he just did a song with Polo G, who
Wow.
right now is one of the biggest artists in the world. He just did a #1 song. He's had every single album he's ever done has gone platinum. So that song is being released in February. We shoot all the music videos, we shoot all the photos, we edit everything ourselves, we market everything ourselves. So that is the aspect behind Three Away. But also, we also try to brand it as much more than a record label, because it is. A lot of people ask, what's Three Away? So Three Away is you're always 3 contacts away. You're
Hmm.
one phone call away, you're one text away, and you're one meeting away from meeting the person who will change your life, or from
Wow. I
making
like that.
$20 million.
Wow.
And I have really learned that with Toby, because he is the king of relationships and building those relationships into not only friendships, but also financial gain. No matter who you want to get a hold of, or no matter what it is you're trying to do, you are always 3 away. So
Hmm.
that's why 3 away is called 3 away. We say 3 bold moves of courage. So that implies not only to the record label, but anybody that wants to join 3 away, where we are their manager and we manage them just like a label would do. But we're also not your typical record label. We're not we control everything that they say and do.
Hmm.
It's, you are your own person. You can be whoever you want to be. We're just going to give you that financial backing. And we're also going to give you the marketing and the tools to be able to grow your following and grow your net worth. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how 3 away works. And that's the same way with, like I said, our real estate business, 5 away. It's
Hmm.
5 away holdings, you're 5 away. So
Hmm.
those are all the multiple facets of the names, and how 3 away is the label, but it's also more of a brand that we're trying to grow and build. And then we have 3 away Productions, which is the media business that will do any high profile media content for any said client. But we focus on high end clients, multimillionaires, rich people who is, for lack of terms, rich people who
We're just saying
like,
how it is.
exactly, who want specific jobs done. Like they want
Mm.
drone flights through their multi-million-dollar mansion, or they want a video of their new yacht they bought or their new plane they bought. So that is kind of how that encapsulates.
Yeah. You've always had, as far as I know, really like thoughtful names for your business. When you were in Ohio, you had 94 feet, talking
Yep.
about 94 feet of the
I didn't even
basketball.
mention 94 feet. That's another,
Let's
see,
bring it back.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's another thing. 94 feet is the basketball clothing company that my buddy and I started, but my partner and I, Ryan, we worked and we grew 94 feet, and we also had a football business. We also had a whole sports encapsulation together into one brand, one parent brand with multiple divisions. We had this whole process, and then literally overnight we moved to Miami,
Hmm.
and basically everything that we had planned I can't work on anymore. As just time, and also once again respecting my current position.
Hmm.
So Ryan and I are on very good terms right now because of that, and I've told him before that I apologize to him, and I still do.
That's very big of you to say all of that too. I feel like you carry a lot of responsibility across so many different platforms. And yeah, it just speaks you got a good heart and you actually care. And I think that's so important in a creative job is you're not money motivated. You actually care how people are being affected by everything that you're doing. And you just want to make really cool stuff. You just really want to put great content out
Yeah,
there and challenge yourself. And I think whether or not you probably do see this, but your life up to this point is really speaking of perseverance and just keeping your eye on the ball, right? Like you established what is
yeah,
good for Zane, what is good for your family when you were what, 19, 20, 23, whatever it was back then, and you're
mhm,
still true to that. I know sometimes that vision gets lost a little bit, but you're always working your way back to it and back to the purpose God's
yeah.
given you and back to the good. And I think that's really important. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing all of those stories because it's so
I'm an
important for
open.
people to see it. You're an open book. Yeah. It's so important for people to realize that and that it's okay. And it's not a failure. There's no such thing as a failure. Everything is unto something. You know,
Absolutely.
you've learned so much. So,
And that's kind of how I
yeah.
built like my personal brand, like what I don't really spend too much time on anymore. My personal brand was exactly that, as
Mm,
being vulnerable, being open. It's so crazy because I by no means in my personal brand have this massive following. I mean, I've had videos that have hit 100,000 views. I've had videos that hit 100,000 likes. I've had all that stuff, but my subscriber count, my follower count, it's not, nothing of it is insane or crazy at all. But I've had so many people reach out and say, like, this has helped and this has helped and this has helped. And kind of like you said with the advice that I gave you that
yep.
I truthfully don't even remember.
I didn't think you would, but it stuck with
Yeah,
me.
no,
Yeah.
but like it blows my mind how such a small follower count, or you can have bigger purposes than you realize. And it goes to show you the follower count, viewership count, that doesn't matter. And and with the personal stuff that I do, or really in anything, it's like I'm gonna try to film this or edit this as if maybe today this will get 10 views, but in 5 years this will get 100 million views.
Mhm.
You don't know. And it's just like with the record label, like all the music videos we do, some of them are over 20, 30, 40,000 now. And these viewerships just are crazy. You don't anticipate. Neon Mansion, I
Mhm.
didn't anticipate that blew up. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just nuts how these things that you don't anticipate that really matter, or that don't really matter that you think, really turn into something bigger. And that's how I
Mhm.
built the YouTube channel, was just being me and trying to be vulnerable and trying to be open. And someone who I haven't mentioned, and I'm not really big into the celebrity game,
Mhm.
but like the person who really changed my mindset, changed my truly my life, changed my outlook on life, changed my creative passions in life, was Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm.
He was like the guy, because everything around him is happiness and being vulnerable and having empathy towards others. And that, like, I studied him for so long, and that kind of changed my perceptions and my outlook on life. And especially as a creative, he is an amazing person to look at for content and building brands and businesses, because he's a businessman himself, obviously. So
Yeah. I really appreciate that. And to bring it full circle, if with everything that you mentioned, everything that you talked to, you're currently going through the mud, but you see the light at the end of the tunnel. What do you hope that people leave with today? Because, like you said, quality over quantity, right? Like, if what is one quality lesson that you feel you've learned, or maybe you're currently learning that you want to give away to our listeners?
oh, yeah, I think there's so many that I think I'm very big on learning, so I'm
Mm.
constantly, and especially like journaling, like I love to journal. So I'm constantly writing down like things that I've learned, and I don't want to be cliche either. So there's so many
That's the
things.
creative in you.
Yeah. I think ultimately, like, you got to have this plan for yourself on what you want to do. And some people don't like goals. And truthfully, I'm really not a goal setter myself. Like, I am, and I write down my goals, but I'm not someone who visually looks at them all the time. And that's probably a bad thing. And I used to beat myself up over that. But then I've kind of realized also that I know what my goals are every day in my head, and I'm constantly revisiting them. But there's so much news, there's so much information out there. You have to find what works best for you
Mhm.
and only you. And you can take pieces of advice from other people and little bits and pieces, but you have to have this plan. The plan has to revolve around how it incorporates your life, not X's life or A's life or C's life. It has to be around your life. And then you've got to follow that plan to the best of your ability. And when you lose that vision, you need to remind yourself where it all started, how it all started, and what you're trying to build. And
Mhm.
if anything doesn't follow with that plan and you think it should, well, then make some changes.
Yeah.
But if you also see it as a negative, then obviously you know you need to eliminate that thing from your life. And I think the short way of saying that is make this plan for yourself. It can be just like what I did, which is write 5 things, or do what's best for you. Maybe write a paragraph and do everything you can to just follow that and get to wherever it is that you want to go.
Yeah.
You continue on that path, eventually you should be there.
Yeah. That's great. Having a vision is so important. Like I said, otherwise you just end up on the hamster wheel and then you're 15, 20 years in and your life, you look back, what have I, what have I come up to? What have I accomplished? And so, yeah, having the
Yeah, and I
vision
think
is
that
so
leads
important.
to the one thing I actually forgot to mention, which was like my personal brand. When I was doing all that personal stuff, that's why I came up with my slogan, which is "You create your own story." The
Oh,
way that I've always kind of interpreted that myself, and what when people ask about it, is if you had this notebook, if you had this figurative notebook and you had a pen, and whatever you wrote in that came true,
mm,
start writing.
mm,
Start writing, because whatever you write in this notebook, it will come true. So you
yeah.
start writing and you keep working. It's
Mm,
gonna come true.
yeah. Keep looking towards the goal. And
Mhm.
yes. Well, Zane, thank you so much for being my first guest. So
Absolutely.
exciting.
It's
You
an
were
honor.
such a
Thank you for
gracious
having
guest.
me. First
Well,
guest.
yes, what an honor, truly. Because, yeah, like I said, you just have so much experience, life experience, career experience. Oh, if our listeners want to find you or work with you or anything of the sort, could you say where they could? Where could they find you?
Yeah, sure. So all of my personal stuff, which would be probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, is Zane, Zanec, my middle name, and then Campbell. So it's Zane C. Campbell on all social platforms for personal brand. Any of the businesses, you've got 3 Away Projects on all social media, and 5 Away Holdings is the 5 Away, the real estate. So yeah, that's all the way across the board. Anybody can send me DM, comments, message, whatever.
Thank you again, Zane. This has been really fun. I see why people do
Absolutely.
this now. Well, if you're ever
Absolutely.
back in Ohio, make sure to connect and yeah,
I absolutely plan on stopping by future. I know last time I was there, they just got the gym open next door.
it is
So
sick. It looks awesome.
yeah, so I will be back there and I'll definitely be back. I don't know when yet, but I will definitely be back soon, sometime.
Well, good. Hit me up when you are.
Absolutely. Will do.
See ya.